New articles come out by Dan Christensen of the Florida Bulldog, in which a new video has come out, and it's not public yet, but the video shows Omar al Bayoumi, the man who provided logistical and financial support to Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi while in San Diego, showing him on a trip here in the United States in Washington, D.C., in what FBI agent Yusuf Bassam basically said was casing the U.S. Capitol. So as you can see, this is the article's title. New video said to show Saudi spy who aided 9/11 hijackers casing the U.S. Capitol. As the massive 9/11 lawsuit against Saudi Arabia plods on toward a looming decisive moment, tantalizing bits and pieces about new evidence are once again trickling out. I'm just going to load this up one more time. The most dramatic discourse is of the existence of a video that purportedly shows Omar al Bayoumi casing the U.S. Capitol, according to a January 26th order by U.S. Magistrate Sarah Netburn, who has unsealed on Thursday. Bayoumi publicly identified by the FBI as a Saudi spy, as one of two Saudis with extensive contacts to two 9/11 hijackers in Southern California, into whom the court has allowed a limited inquiry by attorneys for the 9/11 plaintiffs. The other is Saud al-Fahad al-Tamari. Saudi Fahad al-Tamari was then both a religious leader and an official at the Saudi consulate in Los Angeles. The video is among a collection of documents and footage released to the plaintiffs in March of 2022 and December 2023 by London's Metropolitan Police Service, which investigated Omar al Bayoumi shortly after the Al Qaeda terrorist attacks on New York City and Washington on September 11, 2001, because al Bayoumi had a residence in the United Kingdom, which Scotland Yard had raided. Remember what they found there, too. They found notebooks of airline diagrams relating to Washington, D.C. And they think that these diagrams were to basically help facilitate when to hijack the plane for the Flight 77 hijackers. Court records say that al Bayoumi made the recording while on a trip in Washington, D.C., June, July of 1999. Plaintiffs' lawyers have retried FBI agent Bassam, have retired FBI agent Bassam Youssef, analyzed the video. And he is apparently the person who characterized Bayoumi's actions as casing the Capitol. Either the Capitol or the White House had long been considered the target of United Airlines Flight 93 hijackers, who were ultimately defeated by passengers who stormed the cockpit and caused the hijackers to push the jet down into a field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Everyone on board, 44 passengers, 4 suicide hijackers, died. Now, if we're to believe the story of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and Ramzi bin al-Shibh, before they were captured and tortured, they allowed an Al Jazeera reporter, Yosri Fuda, to interview them in a safe house in Pakistan in 2002. And what they said was the fourth target was the Capitol. And they had nicknames for the Capitol, the Pentagon, and the World Trade Center. I think the World Trade Center was Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Defense was the Pentagon, or Ministry of the Arts was the Capitol, I think. Could be getting that wrong. News of the video's existence comes at the kingdom as its co-defendant, the Saudi-based aviation services company Dala Avco, recently made extensive court filings. So remember, Dala Avco was the company that Omar al Bayoumi worked for. Now, the FBI interviewed employees of Dala Avco, and they said that Omar al Bayoumi was basically a ghost employee, meaning that he would only show up once a month, but he was still collecting a paycheck on behalf of Dala Avco. Now, incidentally enough, the person who had a stake in the company was Osama bin Laden. And that's through the Operation Encore files. That is that the court has no jurisdiction to decide the case because no evidence has been presented that Saudi Arabia has done anything wrong. Excuse me. Kingdom of Saudi Arabia did not support the horrific terrorist attacks that struck its longest-standing ally, the United States of America, on September 11, 2001. Lawyers for the kingdom wrote in a 42-page redacted motion to dismiss filed in late November. Those attacks were carried out by the terrorist group al-Qaeda, whose leader, Osama bin Laden, had years earlier declared al-Qaeda an enemy of both the United States and Saudi Arabia. Yeah, but you had sympathizers within the Saudi Arabian kingdom. This is known in the public record. And they paid blackmail money to Al Qaeda so they wouldn't attack them. And to other groups in Southeast Asia like Jemaah Islamiyah, Abu Sayyaf. So you had these Wahhabi sympathizers within the kingdom in the mid 1990s. I mean, the ideology behind these groups, Wahhabism, comes from Saudi Arabia, which is non-Islamic. Long before the 9/11 attack, Saudi Arabia's most senior political leaders revoked bin Laden's citizenship, froze his assets, and worked to bring him to justice. Its most senior religious leaders denounced terrorist attacks as contrary to Islam. Allegations that Saudi Arabia has been anything but a friend of the United States or anything but a foe to Al Qaeda lacked any basis in fact. Well, that depends. You have a split within the kingdom: those who are of the Wahhabi creed and those of the Western backed, because the biggest importer of U.S. made weapons is Saudi Arabia, and the biggest exporter of oil to the United States is Saudi Arabia. And they get it at a discount price because the United States and Saudi Arabia has allowed the United States to have military bases in the country in the holiest sites of Mecca and Medina. And this is what started the whole bin Laden versus the West. His main agitator was the United States having military bases in Mecca and Medina, which he considers an offense, and got other ignorant Wahhabis to basically agree to this. The plaintiffs, 9/11 victims' family members, countered on December 20th with 2 briefs, an amendment of facts, and hundreds of documentary and multimedia exhibits. All those materials are sealed. Magistrate Netbird's order was a ruling on defense efforts to quash portions of those materials as improper due to violations of the court's discovery orders and briefing schedule. She granted part and deemed part of those efforts. FBI records declassified and made public following President Biden's executive order in September 2, 2021. This is the Operation Encore files, requiring the Bureau to review and release as many records as possible from Operation Encore, which was the follow-up to the original FBI investigation into 9/11, which was called PENPO. Its one secret probe into Saudi complicity in 9/11 identified Omar al Bayoumi as one of the about 50 ghost employees who were paid by Dalafco but didn't do any work. Al Bayoumi is known to have helped hijackers Nawaf al-Hazmi and Khalid al-Mihdhar with numerous day-to-day activities, like finding a place to live, and he paid 3 months' rent right off the bat. Shortly after they arrived in Los Angeles in January of 2000, he had told authorities he met the hijackers by chance at a Los Angeles restaurant. Now, let me tell you a little bit about that story. Now, it goes like this. That Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi were known to come to the United States. This is coming from Operation Encore files, right? That we know of. And I'm about 14,000 pages read already. I have 1,000 pages left, and then I'll be done. Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi were coming to the United States. A call was placed from Malaysia to the King Fahd Mosque in Culver City, Los Angeles. Now, a confidential informant had basically told the FBI that he overheard a phone call from someone from Malaysia to somebody in the King Fahd Mosque, and that Fahad al-Tameri knew that 2 brothers were coming to the United States. This is December of 99, mind you. Remember, that meeting took place in January 5th to January 8th of 2000, the Al-Qaeda summit meeting. After the summit meeting, Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi went to Bangkok with Khalid, Tawfiq bin Attash. Tawfiq bin Attash then stays in Bangkok while Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi come to the United States. And the CIA and the NSA know this, but they intentionally withheld this from the FBI and State Department. Now, the confidential informant basically told the FBI that Fahad al-Tameri wanted a cab driver to basically meet them at the airport, Los Angeles International, LAX. And so this Tunisian cab driver by the name of Khalid Benamarine, who was interviewed by the FBI, and who basically pointed out Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi as the 2 people that he was to pick up. Now, Fahad al-Tameri told Khalid Ben about two Saudis. Didn't tell them their names. Told them they were brothers coming to the United States, but they weren't brothers. Brothers in the meaning of Islamic. They're Islamic brothers. Khalid Ben picks them up, drops them off at the residence of Fahad al-Tamari. And the 9/11 Commission basically states, now this comes from Dieter Snell, senior staff member, who basically says that for 2 weeks they didn't know where Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi stood. Well, through the Operation Encore files now, we know where they stood because Fahad al-Tamari had rented out rooms in these apartment condos and basically gave residence to these two men, who then went to the King Fahd Mosque in Culver City. From there, they were told of a restaurant that saw halal meat called the Mediterranean Cafe, which is no longer in existence. They go to the Mediterranean Cafe. Now, according to Kaysan Bindan, an associate of Omar al Bayoumi, he meets with Omar al Bayoumi one day to try and get his INS application fixed or something like that, or a driver's license, something to that effect. Omar al Bayoumi first drives to the King Fahd Mosque, and Kaysan Bindan sees a man, and Omar al Bayoumi, man greets Omar al Bayoumi, brings him inside, but he doesn't know what goes on. For an hour, they stay there. Fahad al-Tamari and Omar al Bayoumi. Omar al Bayoumi then gets in the car, drives around, stuff like that. Then Kaysan Bindan, hey, where you want to go eat? They go to one restaurant, which is nearby the Mediterranean Cafe, but they don't sell halal meat. And so they walk to the next restaurant, which is Mediterranean Cafe. And allegedly, this is how Omar al Bayoumi meets Nawaf al-Hazmi and Khalid al-Mihdhar. FBI interviews and the 9/11 Commission interviews Omar al Bayoumi, in which Omar al Bayoumi basically says a chance meet. Kaysan Bindan, who was interviewed by the FBI, gave a couple of accounts. One of them was that Nawaf al-Hazmi and Khalid al-Mihdhar were already in the restaurant, and Omar al Bayoumi and Kaysan Bindan sit down. According to Omar al Bayoumi, they get to the restaurant first, and then later on, Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi walk in. Now, Kaysan Bindan has changed his story. He's done it. He's flip-flopped. But the real story is that Omar al Bayoumi had met with these two people. And then he provided living apartment for them in San Diego. They tell them to go to San Diego, and they get a ride from somebody who's an associate to King Fahd Mosque to drive them, because they don't know where they're going. They don't speak English, right? And that's how the whole story of Omar al Bayoumi had met with Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi. And he provided with them, he got them a bank account, which Anwar al-Awlaki, who's an imam at the mosque in Riyadh, Masjid al-Riyadh, I think, in San Diego, had met with these two men and helped them get a bank account open for them in their name. Omar al Bayoumi had paid for the first 3 months' rent for these two men. There was a housewarming party in which Kaysan Bindan's holding the camera. And in the shot, you could see Khalid al-Mihdhar in a yellow shirt and Omar al Bayoumi. It's in the shot, too. So that's the story of Omar al Bayoumi and Khalid al-Mihdhar. Now, Hazmi and Mihdhar were part of a 5-man al-Qaeda crew that commandeered Flight 77 and crashed in the Pentagon, killing themselves and 53 passengers and crew, right? Now, neither Omar al Bayoumi's video of the Capitol nor Yusuf's report about it are public. And in her 14-page order, Magistrate Knepper ruled that it won't be allowed into evidence because plaintiffs' attorneys were late providing a copy to the defense in violation of court rules, and as a result, prejudiced the defense, which had no opportunity to challenge Yusuf's findings. I mean, it may goes to show you that, hey, one of the targets for hijackers was the Capitol, but I don't think this is really big issue. I could be wrong, because it could show premeditation if they could prove it. I don't know what else evidence they have that's not public, what classified information they have. An earlier timely report by USF was not affected by the order. It addressed Saudi Arabia's use of diplomatic outposts in the District of Columbia and Los Angeles to export extremism. The roles of Fahad al-Tamer and Omar al Bayoumi in those efforts and the significance of Saudi Arabia's support for extremism to the operation success of the 9/11 attacks, Netber wrote, it remains in the case as expert testimony. Lawyers for Saudi Arabia won most of their challenges. One, they did not win, despite Netber's conclusions that the plaintiffs had violated the spirit of a court rule, was their attempt to exclude parts of the plaintiff's 2,118 paragraph statements of the facts offered to foil the Saudis' motion to dismiss. The rule regarding how factual amendments should be presented to the court was intended to streamline arguments and spare the court from scouring hundreds of exhibits to find potentially dispositive nuggets of information that were wrote. She then cited from a 1991 case. After all, judges are not like pigs hunting for truffles buried in the record. Yet, after concluding that the plaintiff's presentation leaves the court no choice but to root around in the amendments, she stated that the Saudis' proposed remedy, striking entire passages of offending text, would go too far. Netber sided with the Saudis in deciding to exclude the declarations of three new fact witnesses, Brian Wiedner, Usman Madha, and James Heavey, and the expert witnesses' declarations of William Adams, and insofar as the Bayoumi casing, the Capitol video, Bassam Youssef. The principal reason? The failure to timely disclose the new witnesses to the defense. The order describes Wiedner as an ex-FBI agent and longtime consultant for the plaintiff's counsel who gave a sworn statement about the purpose and significance of the 130-page July 2021 FBI report. And you can see this is the link to the story about the FBI report that he wrote, Dan Christensen, back in May of 2022, which he broke, the story broke, it's always broken by Dan Christensen, who's the best in the country, in my view, regarding up-to-date 9/11 information. He's the best. And I can't speak enough about the guy. He's wonderful. And that's the story about the FBI's report, right? Mata was a regular attendee at the two Los Angeles mosques and worked at the Islamic Foundation of Sheikh Ibn Taymiyyah from 1998 to 2013. In that capacity, he had contact with Fahad al-Tamer and other people's interest in this litigation. He made a timely declaration regarding those contacts and was deposed by the defense in 2021. But 2 years later, he reviewed footage and photographs released by London's Metropolitan Police Service and wrote a second declaration that was excluded. Heavey is identified in the order as a Greenwich Parks and Recreation employee whose declaration discusses the visibility of the World Trade Center from Greenwich Point Park in Connecticut on Long Island Sound. The significance of this isn't discussed further, which sucks. What the hell does that mean? Who is in Greenwich Point Park? Were there connections in Long Island Sound in Connecticut? Expert witness Adams was described as a digital visualization specialist who provided reconstructions of an event based on video, photographs, and floor plans. Which, oh boy, I mean, this is probably the World Trade Center. So I'm basing it on. All right. A February 9th letter from plaintiff's lawyers to Netber asked her to unseal her order, but also all the parties supporting and opposing filings. That includes the Saudis' exhibits and all reference materials provided by the Metropolitan Police Service. Given the tremendous public interest in the vast multi-district litigation addressing liability for the worst terrorist attack on U.S. soil, the bright light cast upon the judicial process requires that the public have access to not only the court's decision, but also to all the materials placed before the court and relevant to the performance of the judicial function and useful in the judicial process, wrote attorneys Robert Hayfield of Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, and Sean Carter of Philadelphia. In this instance, those materials include each of the letters and all the exhibits placed before the court for the court's consideration in determining the defendant's motion to strike evidence from the record on the two defendants' pending dismissive motions. In other words, what they're trying to argue is that because now we can't give it as evidence, we need the court's order to basically make this publicly releasable so the public can see it. At least let the public see it. If it's not evidence, it's not going to be used in a case. That means the public could see it. I mean, it's not used as evidence. It's not used to basically show that there's a Saudi government connection to 9/11 hijackers. So why can't we see it? The public's continued confidence in the judicial process requires that the public have access to both the decision as well as what was available for the court to consider in reaching its decision. In her order this week unsealing her January 26th order, the magistrate gave lawyers for Saudi Arabia and Dal Avco until February 21st to respond to the plaintiff's request to unseal all the other material. And we haven't heard because today is the 22nd. That's why. So that's the latest story. Wow. I wonder what type of evidence that's going to show. And it's a damn shame that it wasn't given to the defense so they could review it and couldn't be used in this trial, in this case, which basically has been, you know, Brian Eagleson of 9/11 Justice and Elizabeth Miller from um, the Families of September 11th group. You know, they got to be devastated about this, you know, this case because it's been so interfered with, and basically the U.S. government hasn't released all the documents regarding the FBI's investigation into Saudi government complicity with the 9/11 attack, 9/11 hijackers. Whether they knew about the attacks or not, I think they might have. But you know, at least they're trying. At least they're trying. Which I could say for them, you know, for lawyer firms like Motley Rice and Creedley and Sean Carter, Brian Kafifel, I mean, you know, they deserve a lot of credit. But for so-called, you know, 9/11 Truth Movement, 22 years of nothing. I don't hear nothing from you. All right, you're dead in the water. So I don't know what you're waiting for. Maybe because you allow for the fantastical to override your cognitive thinking abilities and evidence because either you think Israel or the US government are basically in on it and you just say it because, and you don't have evidence for it. And anything that contradicts it, like Saudi Arabia or you know, there's not enough evidence, you know, coming from the FBI interviews of people. All this is all fake because it's government's narrative. No, it's not. And you haven't read the 9/11 Commission report, you haven't read the Joint House Inquiry, you haven't read Operation Encore, the Canestraro document, Pent Bomb reports, the Inspector General report of the FBI's handling of the 9/11 attack. You haven't read any of this stuff because you've been too busy listening to people like Richard Gage and Bob Oniger and Christopher Boland all these years. Stop listening to these people. They don't know what they're talking about. Follow the work of Dan Christensen at Florida Bulldog, who is the best in the country, number one, when it comes to groundbreaking stories and documents that are released to the public. Um, Again, you know, I can't sing the praises of his work. And there's others out there that are still trying to report to you. DJ Dummer Detonate is out there. I mean, Ryan Dawson reports, you know, every so often here and there. And, you know, we have the new kids on the block like Sean Russell and Darren Harvey and Ben and Eric from Project New American Century who are doing magnificent work. And Jonathan Bellatone, who basically opened up a YouTube channel reading to you important documents and files as well. So we, you know, there are, you know, younger people out there trying to bring attention to this case because 9/11 is not over. It may have happened 22 years ago, but as time progresses, more documents and files are being declassified, which means new information is being presented to the public. All right. All right, guys, listen, any more updated videos, you best be sure that I'll break it to you. Have a good night, everybody. Stay safe.